Elena Martinez looked up from her desk as the sky turned dark. At first, she thought clouds were blocking the sun. Then she saw the ship. The massive vessel hung in the air above New Chicago like a metal mountain. Its surface was smooth and black, stretching from one end of the city to the other. Elena had never seen anything so big. She pressed her face against the office window, watching as smaller ships broke away from the main vessel and spread across the sky. "Dr. Martinez, are you seeing this?" Her assistant ran into the room, pointing at the television screen. News reporters were talking fast, their voices shaking with fear and excitement. "Ships have appeared over every major city on Earth," the reporter said. "London, Tokyo, New York, Moscow, all at the same time. We have no idea where they came from or what they want." Elena grabbed her phone and tried to call her brother in Los Angeles. The line was busy. She tried again. Still busy. Everyone was trying to call someone. The ship stayed in the sky for 3 hours. People stood in the streets looking up and pointing. Cars stopped in the middle of roads. Nothing moved except the alien vessels, which seemed to float without making any sound. Then they spoke. The voice came from everywhere at once. It spoke in perfect English, though Elena somehow knew it was speaking every language on Earth at the same time. "People of Earth," the voice said, "we are the Velthani. We come in peace. We have watched your world for many years. You are young, but you show promise. We wish to help you grow." Elena felt a chill run down her back. Something about the voice made her uncomfortable, though she could not say why. "We will land in your cities and build places where we can work together. Do not fear us. We bring gifts that will make your lives better. Soon you will see that we are friends." The broadcast ended and the city fell silent. Even the traffic seemed quieter than before. Jake Morrison was working on a construction site when the ships arrived. He had been laying concrete for the foundation of a new building when his foreman told everyone to stop and look up. Jake was not easily impressed, but the alien ship made his jaw drop. He had built some of the tallest buildings in the city, but this thing made them look like toys. "What do you think they want?" asked his co-worker, a young man named Billy. "Nothing good," Jake said. He had served in the army before becoming a construction worker. He knew that when someone showed up with that much power, they usually wanted to use it. The aliens did not waste time. Within days, they began landing their smaller ships in every major city. The Veltani looked almost human, but taller and thinner. Their skin was pale gray and their eyes were larger than human eyes. They wore simple white clothing and spoke in calm, friendly voices. The world leaders met with them immediately. The aliens brought gifts: medicine that could cure cancer, energy systems that produced no pollution, seeds that grew into crops twice as large as normal ones. "All we ask," the Velthani leader said during a televised meeting, "is permission to build research centers in your cities. We want to learn about your culture while we share our knowledge with you." Most people were happy. The stock market went up. Protests stopped. Even wars paused as everyone focused on the aliens and their amazing gifts. But Jake noticed something strange. The aliens always chose their building sites very carefully. They would arrive with strange scanning devices and spend days testing the ground before they started building. It reminded him of oil companies looking for drilling sites. "They are not just picking random spots," he told his crew one day. "They are looking for something specific underground." Colonel Lisa Brooks was not impressed by the aliens. She worked at the Pentagon, and her job was to worry about threats to national security. The Velthani seemed friendly, but they had also shown up with enough firepower to destroy every city on Earth. "I do not trust them," she told her team during a classified meeting. "No one travels across space just to help strangers. They want something." "What could they want that they could not just take?" asked Major Steve Clark. "I do not know," Lisa said, "but I intend to find out." She began organizing a small group of scientists and military officers who shared her concerns. They called themselves the Watch. Their job was to observe the aliens carefully and look for signs of deception. Elena joined the Watch after her first meeting with a Velthani scientist. She had been excited to discuss archaeology with an alien, But something felt wrong about the conversation. The alien asked too many questions about ancient human sites. He seemed especially interested in places where old civilizations had built, underground. Why do they care about old ruins? She asked Lisa during their first secret meeting. That is what we need to find out, Lisa replied. Within 6 months, the Valthani had built towers in 50 cities around the world. The towers were beautiful, made of some kind of crystal that caught light and threw rainbows across the sky. They rose higher than any human building, disappearing into the clouds. The aliens said the towers were for research and communication. They invited human scientists to visit and learn. Most people saw them as symbols of a bright future. But Jake noticed that construction crews were no longer allowed to work near the tower sites. The aliens had brought their own workers. Strange, machines that dug deep into the earth before the towers were built. They are not just building up, he told Elena when they met at a coffee shop. They are digging down, way down, and they do not want us to see what they find. Elena nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. I think, she said quietly, they are not here to help us. I think they are here to find something. Something that was buried a long time ago. Neither of them knew how right they were. Jake Morrison swung his sledgehammer at the concrete wall one more time. The foundation repair job was supposed to be simple, but nothing had gone right all week. First, their regular equipment broke down. Then, the ground-penetrating radar started, giving strange readings. Boss, we got a problem, called Billy from across the construction site. He was pointing at a crack that had opened in the floor. This does not look normal. Jake walked over and knelt down beside the crack. Cold air was flowing up from below, carrying a strange metallic smell. He shined his flashlight into the opening and saw nothing but darkness. How deep do you think it goes? Billy asked. Only one way to find out. Jake grabbed a crowbar and began widening the crack. The concrete came apart easily, as if it was only a thin shell covering something much older beneath. Within an hour, they had opened a hole big enough for a person to climb through. Jake lowered a rope into the darkness and descended carefully. His flashlight beam revealed smooth metal walls and a floor that seemed to stretch beyond the light. Billy, he called up, you need to see this. The space below was enormous. Jake found himself standing in a corridor that was perfectly straight and at least 20 feet wide. The walls were made of some kind of metal that did not rust or show any signs of age. Strange symbols were carved into the surface, glowing with a faint blue light. Billy dropped down beside him, whistling softly. What is this place? I have no idea, Jake said. But it is old, really old. They walked down the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The passage seemed to go on forever, branching off into smaller tunnels and larger chambers. Some rooms contained machines that hummed softly, as if they were still working after years of abandonment. Jake took pictures with his phone, though he was not sure anyone would believe what he was seeing. The construction site was only 3 blocks from the Valthani Tower. He wondered if this was what the aliens had been looking for. Elena Martinez received Jake's call at her university office. She had been grading papers when her phone rang, and at first she thought it was a joke. You found what under your construction site? She asked. An underground facility, Jake said. Old technology, strange symbols, the works. And Elena, I think you need to see this before I report it to anyone else. Elena knew Jake through the watch. Lisa Brooks had introduced them months ago when they first started questioning the aliens' true motives. If Jake thought this was important enough to call her first, then it probably was. She grabbed her archaeological equipment and drove to the construction site. Jake met her at the fence looking excited and nervous. Before we go, down there, he said, you should know that some of those symbols look familiar. Like really familiar. As in, I think I have seen them before, but I cannot remember where. Elena climbed down into the facility and immediately understood what Jake meant. The symbols were carved in a style that reminded her of ancient human writing, but they were far more sophisticated than anything she had studied. The metal walls were smooth and seamless, made with technology that was beyond current human capability. This cannot be human, she said, running her hand along the wall, but it does not look alien either. They spent hours exploring the corridors. Elena documented everything with her camera while Jake mapped the layout. The facility was huge, stretching far beyond the construction site boundaries. Some passages were blocked by sealed doors, but others led to chambers filled with dormant equipment. In one room, they found what looked like computer terminals built into the walls. The screens were dark, but Elena could see her reflection in the black surface. The keyboards had symbols instead of letters. "Jake," she said softly, "I need to call Lisa, right now." Colonel Lisa Brooks arrived at the construction site with a small team of specialists. She had brought Dr. Peter Adams, a linguistics expert who worked with military intelligence. She had also brought 2 soldiers and enough equipment to set up a temporary command post. "How many people know about this?" Lisa asked Jake as they prepared to descend into the facility. "Just my crew," Jake said. 5 guys. I told them to keep quiet until we figured out what we found." "Good. Let's keep it that way for now." Lisa's team spent 3 days exploring the underground complex. What they discovered changed everything. They thought they knew about human history. The facility was not just large. It was massive. Peter's translation work revealed that the complex stretched across multiple states, connected by high-speed transport tunnels that could move people and equipment at incredible speeds. "These symbols are definitely based on ancient human languages," Peter told the group during their first briefing. "But they represent a level of linguistic development that should not have existed thousands of years ago." Elena had made an even more shocking discovery in one of the deeper chambers. She found star maps carved into the walls, showing Earth's position relative to nearby solar systems. Some of the systems were marked with symbols that indicated hostile alien civilizations. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a section of the map. "These markings show the location of the Valtani home system. And this symbol next to it translates to something like defeated enemy or banished threat." Lisa studied the map carefully. "You are saying that whoever built this place fought the Valtani before?" "That is exactly what I am saying." The most important discovery came when Peter figured out how to activate one of the computer terminals. The screen flickered to life, displaying text in the ancient symbols. Peter worked for hours to translate the first few lines. "This is a log entry," he said finally. "It says archive system active, threat level, minimal, monitoring phase, continuing, human population, stable. Recommendation, maintain cultural suppression protocol until primary threat returns." Jake frowned. "Cultural suppression protocol, what does that mean?" Elena felt a chill run through her body. "I think it means that someone deliberately kept humanity from developing advanced technology. They wanted us to seem primitive." "But why?" Lisa asked. Peter continued translating. The answer came in the next log entry. "The Valthani defeat was total but temporary. They will return when they believe humanity has forgotten its true capabilities. When they do, the archive will activate all dormant facilities and restore human civilization to its proper level of development." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the screen, trying to understand what they were reading. "Are you saying," Jake said slowly, "that humanity used to be more advanced than we are now, and that we deliberately made ourselves look primitive to fool the aliens?" "That appears to be exactly what happened," Peter said. Lisa grabbed her radio and called her headquarters. "This is Colonel Brooks. I need to speak with the general immediately. We have a situation that changes everything." As she waited for the call to connect, she looked around at the ancient facility. The Valthani had come to Earth looking for these underground complexes. They wanted to destroy them before humanity could remember what it used to be. But they had made a mistake. By building their towers and scanning the ground, they had accidentally helped the humans find exactly what the aliens were trying to keep hidden. The war that started 15,000 years ago was about to begin again. Dr. Peter Adams stared at the computer screen, his eyes burning from hours of translation work. The ancient symbols were starting to make sense, but what they revealed made him question everything he thought he knew about human history. "Elena, you need to see this," he called across the underground chamber. She hurried over, followed by Jake and Colonel Lisa Brooks. "I've been working on the main database," Peter said. The archive contains the complete records of human civilization from 15,000 years ago, and we were not primitive cave dwellers back then. The screen showed images of massive cities floating in space, ships that could travel between stars in days, and technology that made current human achievements look like stone tools. According to these records, Peter continued, humanity had spread across dozens of star systems. We had an empire that stretched halfway across the galaxy. Earth was just one of many human worlds. Elena leaned closer to the screen. What happened to all of this? Peter typed a command and new text appeared. The Vilethani happened. They started a war that lasted over 1,000 years. Humans won, but barely. The cost was enormous. The records showed battles fought across entire solar systems. Planets turned into weapons, stars used as shields. Billions of humans died fighting, an enemy that saw them as insects to be crushed. The Vilethani were not just trying to conquer human space, Peter explained. They were trying to wipe out humanity completely. They believed that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Jake frowned. Why? What made them think we were dangerous? Because we kept beating them, Lisa said, reading over Peter's shoulder. Every time they thought they had us defeated, humans found a way to fight back. We adapted faster than they could predict. The archive revealed the final phase of the ancient war. Humanity's leaders knew that even victory would leave them too weak to defend themselves if the Vilethani ever returned. So they made a desperate choice. They decided to hide, Peter said. Not just in space, but in time. They built these underground facilities and then deliberately destroyed their own civilization. Elena could not believe what she was hearing. They destroyed their own empire. Not destroyed. Hidden. They made it look like human civilization had collapsed, but really they moved everything underground. Then they released a genetic virus that would suppress human intelligence and technological development for thousands of years. The plan was brilliant and terrible. The surviving humans would seem like primitive savages to anyone who came looking. The Vilethani would see a planet full of cave dwellers and assume that humanity had fallen back into barbarism. The virus was designed to wear off gradually, Peter continued. Each generation would be slightly smarter than the last. By the time the Vilethani returned, humanity would have recovered enough to fight, but would still appear to be a young civilization. Jake shook his head. So everything we think we know about human history is a lie? Not a lie, Elena said. A cover story. The pyramids, the ancient civilizations, the slow development of technology. It was all planned to make us look like we were naturally progressing from stone tools to space travel. Lisa was studying the tactical information in the archive. The ancient humans had not just hidden their civilization. They had built the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. Look at this, she said, pointing to a section of the database. The underground facilities were not just hiding places. They were weapons. Each one contains enough firepower to destroy an entire Vilethani fleet. The archive showed the locations of hundreds of hidden facilities around the world. Most were still sealed, waiting for the right moment to activate. The ancient humans had turned Earth itself into a massive military base disguised as a primitive world. There is more, Peter said, his voice shaking with excitement. The archive says that certain humans carry genetic markers that allow them to access the facilities, descendants of the original builders. He looked directly at Jake. That is why you were able to find this place. Your construction job was not random. You were unconsciously drawn here because your DNA contains the access codes. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation in his head. Ever since he had entered the facility, he had been having flashes of memory that were not his own. Images of starships and alien battles. Knowledge of weapons and tactics he had never learned. It is starting, Elena said, watching Jake's face change. The genetic programming is activating. The archive confirmed her words. Sensors around the world were detecting increased brain activity in humans who carried the ancient genetic markers. People were being drawn to hidden entrances they had never seen before. Construction workers in London found a facility under their building site. A farmer in Kansas discovered an entrance in his field. A teacher in Tokyo felt compelled to dig in her school's basement. How many people have these genetic markers? Lisa asked. According to the database, about 1 in every 1,000 humans, Peter replied. That means there are roughly 7 million people around the world who can access these facilities. Elena realized the full scope of what was happening. The Valthani triggered this themselves. By building their towers and scanning for the underground facilities, they activated the archive's defense protocols. The ancient warning system had been watching and waiting for 15,000 years. When alien technology began actively searching for the hidden human facilities, the archive interpreted this as a return of the primary threat. Now it was waking up the descendants of humanity's greatest warriors and giving them access to weapons that could reshape the galaxy. Lisa grabbed her communication equipment and tried to contact her superiors, but the signal was being blocked. The archive had taken control of all electronic communications in the area. Do not worry, a new voice said. They all turned to see the main computer terminal displaying a human face. It looked like a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a sad smile. I am the archive, the face said. I have been waiting a very long time to speak with you. Peter dropped his translation notes. You are artificial intelligence? I am the collected knowledge and personality of Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief scientist of the Human Defense Initiative. I volunteered to have my consciousness transferred to the archive system so that I could guide humanity when the Valthani returned. Elena stepped forward. How long have you been aware of what was happening on the surface? I have been monitoring human development for the entire 15,000 years. I watched as your ancestors slowly recovered from the genetic suppression. I guided certain technological developments to ensure that you would be ready when this day came. Jake felt more memories flooding his mind. He could see the ancient war, the desperate fight for survival, the decision to sacrifice everything for a chance at future victory. What happens now? He asked. The archive smiled. Now, humanity remembers what it really is. The Valthani came here expecting to find a primitive species that they could easily conquer. Instead, they have awakened the descendants of the Empire that defeated them before. Around the world, hidden facilities were coming online. Ancient weapons were powering up. Humans with the genetic markers were experiencing the same awakening that Jake was going through. The second phase of the war begins now, the archive said. And this time we will make sure the Valthani never threaten anyone again. Mary Collins was teaching her third-grade class in London when the headache started. She tried to ignore it, but the pain grew stronger until she could barely stand. The strange part was that the pain seemed to be pulling her in a specific direction. Missy Collins, are you okay? Asked one of her students. I am fine, she lied, though she was anything but fine. Something was calling to her from beneath the school. She could feel it like a magnetic pull, growing stronger every minute. Across the world, similar scenes were playing out. Tony Rodriguez, a mechanic in Mexico City, suddenly abandoned his work and began digging in his garage floor. Kate Johnson, a farmer in rural Australia, found herself walking to a specific spot in her field where she knew, somehow, that she needed to dig. None of them understood what was happening to them. They only knew that they had to follow the invisible force that was guiding them to places they had never seen before. Jake Morrison felt the change too, but he was already underground when it hit. The strange memories that had been trickling into his mind suddenly became a flood. He knew things he had never learned, languages he had never studied, the layout of machines he had never seen. Jake, what is happening to you? Elena asked, watching as his eyes took on a distant look. I remember, Jake said in a voice that sounded different from his normal tone. I remember the war. I remember my ship. I remember dying in the last battle above Proxima Centauri. Dr. Peter Adams looked up from the archive terminal where he had been monitoring global communications. Reports are coming in from everywhere. People around the world are exhibiting the same behavior. They are finding hidden entrances to facilities just like this one. The archive's holographic face appeared on the main screen. The awakening process has begun. Humans with the genetic markers are recovering their ancestral memories. They will remember skills and knowledge that have been dormant for 15,000 years. Colonel Lisa Brooks was coordinating with military contacts around the globe, but the reports she was receiving made no sense according to normal reality. A construction worker in Berlin had used his bare hands to tear apart a concrete wall that should have required heavy machinery. A school teacher in New York had somehow activated ancient technology that she should not have been able to understand. How is this possible? Lisa asked the archive. The genetic markers do more than just provide access to the facilities, the archive explained. They contain compressed memories and skills from your ancestors. Think of them as biological data, storage devices. When activated, they can temporarily give someone the knowledge and abilities of the ancient humans. Elena watched Jake as he moved through the facility with growing confidence. He operated control panels that had baffled her hours before. He read the ancient symbols as easily as if they were written in modern English. "It is not just knowledge," Jake said, looking at his hands with amazement. "I feel stronger, faster, like my body is remembering how to work properly." The archive nodded. The genetic suppression affected more than just intelligence. It limited human physical capabilities as well. As the suppression ends, humans will begin to approach their full potential. Above ground, the Veltani were becoming aware that something had changed. Their scanning equipment, designed to locate the hidden human facilities, was now detecting massive energy surges from dozens of locations around the world. In the Veltani Tower above New Chicago, Commander Zeltar studied the incoming reports. With growing alarm, the primitive humans were somehow accessing technology that should not have existed on this planet. "Increase the scanning intensity," he ordered his subordinates. "Find these underground locations and destroy them immediately." But the Veltani were too late. The human facilities were not just powering up. They were connecting to each other through the ancient tunnel network. What had once been isolated bunkers was becoming a unified defensive system spanning the entire planet. Jake felt the connection happen. One moment he was aware only of the facility beneath New Chicago. The next, he could sense every other installation around the world. He could communicate with the other awakened humans through the archives network. "Mary Collins in London reports that her facility contains a manufacturing center," he said, though Elena was not sure how he could possibly know that. "Tony Rodriguez in Mexico City has found a weapons depot. Kate Johnson in Australia is standing in what appears to be a command center for the entire Southern Hemisphere." Elena realized that they were witnessing the resurrection of humanity's ancient military network. The Veltani had come to destroy scattered bunkers, but instead they had awakened an integrated defense system that spanned continents. "How many facilities are now active?" Lisa asked. The archive displayed a world map dotted with hundreds of glowing points. Currently, 237 primary installations are online, with supporting networks bringing the total to over 1,000 connected facilities. Peter looked up from his translation work, his face pale with shock. "I have been reading the tactical manuals stored in the archive. The weapon systems in these facilities are not just advanced, they are specifically designed to counter Veltani technology. The ancient humans had studied their enemy for over 1,000 years. They knew every weakness in Veltani ships, every flaw in their tactics, every vulnerability in their psychology. The underground facilities contained weapons that could exploit all of these weaknesses. The Veltani fighting doctrine is based on overwhelming technological superiority," the archive explained. "They rely on their opponents being unable to match their firepower. But these weapons were built by people who understood Veltani technology better than the Veltani themselves." Jake walked over to a wall panel that Elena had assumed was decorative. He pressed his palm against it, and the wall slid aside to reveal a chamber filled with equipment that looked like nothing she had ever seen. "Personal combat suits," Jake said, though Elena was sure he had never seen them before either. "Designed for fighting Veltani warriors in close combat. Each suit multiplies human strength and speed by a factor of 50. Lisa felt a chill as she realized the full implications. "You are saying that a single human in one of those suits could fight multiple Veltani soldiers?" "Not just fight them," the archive said. "Defeat them easily. The Veltani are individually weaker than humans, They rely on their technology to give them an advantage. These suits level the playing field. Around the world, the awakened humans were making similar discoveries. Each facility contained weapons and equipment specifically designed for the coming war. But more importantly, each human was remembering how to use them. Mary Collins, the London schoolteacher, found herself able to operate alien weapon systems with the skill of a veteran soldier. Tony Rodriguez could repair and modify ancient technology as if he had been trained for years. Kate Johnson was coordinating defensive positions across 3 continents with the strategic insight of a seasoned general. The Valtani made a critical error, the archive said. They assumed that 15,000 years was enough time for humanity to completely forget its past. They did not account for genetic memory storage. Elena watched as more wall panels opened throughout the facility, revealing equipment and weapons that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. What happens when they realize their mistake? Jake answered without turning around. They will try to destroy us before we can fully awaken. But it is already too late. The network is active, the weapons are online, and humanity is remembering what it used to be. Through the archive's communication system, Lisa could hear reports from the other facilities. The awakened humans were not just individual people anymore. They were becoming a collective intelligence, sharing memories and skills across the global network. This is not just about recovering ancient technology, she realized. This is about humanity evolving into something new, something that can not only fight the Valthani but defeat them permanently. The archive smiled. The Valthani wanted to conquer a primitive species. Instead, they have awakened the heirs to a galactic empire. The war they started 15,000 years ago is about to end. And this time there will be no mercy for the aggressors. Jake Morrison stood in the command center deep beneath New Chicago, no longer the simple construction worker he had been just days before. The genetic memories flowing through his mind told him he had once been Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Fleet, killed in action 15,000 years ago above a distant star. Now he was alive again in the body of his own descendant, with all his ancient knowledge intact. All facilities report ready status, he announced to Elena and the others. We have 600 installations online across the planet, each one armed with weapons the Valthani have never seen before. Elena watched the transformation with amazement and growing concern. Jake looked the same, but he moved and spoke like a completely different person. The shy construction worker was gone, replaced by a hardened military commander with centuries of combat experience. "Jake, are you still you?" she asked. He turned to look at her, and for a moment his expression softened. "I am still me, Elena, but I am also him. The memories, the skills, the knowledge. It is all real, and it is all necessary for what comes next." Colonel Lisa Brooks was coordinating the global response from her portable command station. Reports were flooding in from every corner of the world. The awakened humans were moving with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. Mary Collins reports that the London facility is targeting the Valthani Tower with energy weapons, Lisa announced. Tony Rodriguez in Mexico City is preparing to launch some kind of orbital strike. Kate Johnson says the Australian Command Center is ready to activate what she calls the final protocol. Dr. Peter Adams looked up from his work at the archive terminal, his face pale with shock. "I have been reading the final battle plans from the ancient war. What they are planning to do is not just an attack. It is complete annihilation." The archive's holographic face appeared on the main screen. The Valthani came here to finish what they started 15,000 years ago. They intended to wipe out humanity completely. We cannot allow them to try again. Above ground, the Valthani were realizing their mistake too late. Commander Zeltar stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. Energy signatures were appearing all over the planet, showing technology levels that should not have been possible. "How can these primitive humans possess such weapons?" he demanded of his subordinates. "Commander," his tactical officer replied, nervously, "I am detecting weapon systems that match the profiles from our historical databases. These are the same energy signatures our ancestors encountered during the Great War." Zeltar felt cold fear grip his hearts. The Great War was ancient history, a conflict so terrible that his people rarely spoke of it. They had fought a species, called humans, and barely survived the experience. But that was impossible. The humans had been reduced to primitive savages thousands of years ago. "Activate all defensive systems," he ordered. "Contact the fleet immediately, we may need to retreat." But it was already too late. Jake Morrison pressed a control that he somehow knew how to operate, and the real war began. The attack was coordinated and devastating. In London, Mary Collins activated weapons that fired beams of pure energy at the Valthani Tower, cutting through alien shields as if they were made of paper. In Mexico City, Tony Rodriguez launched missiles that curved through the air with impossible precision, striking the tower's most vulnerable points. Around the world, similar attacks destroyed every Valthani installation in a matter of minutes. The towers that had taken months to build were reduced to smoking rubble in seconds, but the ground assault was only the beginning. "Activating orbital defense network," Jake announced, his fingers flying over controls that he had never seen before but understood perfectly. Elena watched as sections of the facility's ceiling slid open, revealing launch tubes that stretched up toward the surface. "What are those?" "Weapons that have been waiting 15,000 years for this moment," Jake replied. The missiles that launched from the hidden silos were unlike anything humanity had ever built in its modern era. They accelerated to incredible speeds, broke through Earth's atmosphere, and struck the Valthani fleet with pinpoint accuracy. The alien ships, caught completely off guard, tried to return fire. But their weapons had been designed to fight primitive humans with crude technology. Against the ancient human defense systems, they were nearly useless. "Valthani fleet is withdrawing from Earth orbit," Lisa reported, monitoring communications from military satellites. "They are trying to escape." Jake shook his head. "They cannot be allowed to escape. If they return to their home system and report what they found here, they will come back with a larger force." He activated another control, and Elena felt the entire facility vibrate with barely contained power. "What was that?" she asked. The archive answered. "Phase 2 of the final protocol. The lunar installations are coming online." Elena stared at the display screen as it showed the moon's surface. Sections of lunar rock were sliding away to reveal massive structures that had been hidden for millennia. Ships began emerging from underground hangars, ships that dwarfed the fleeing Valthani vessels. "We had a fleet on the moon the entire time?" Peter asked in amazement. "Not just on the moon," the archive replied. "Asteroid bases, orbital platforms, hidden stations throughout the solar system. The ancient humans did not just hide their civilization on Earth. They built a complete military infrastructure and waited for the right moment to reveal it. The lunar fleet moved to intercept the retreating Valthani ships. The alien vessels tried to fight, but it was hopeless. They were facing the accumulated military might of a civilization that had been planning this moment for 15,000 years. Commander Zeltar's ship was one of the last to be destroyed. As his vessel broke apart around him, he transmitted a final message to his homeworld. "The humans are not what we thought," he said, his voice filled with terror. "They are the old enemy. The species from the Great War has returned. Prepare for—" The transmission ended as his ship exploded in a burst of brilliant light. Jake watched the destruction of the alien fleet with grim satisfaction. "It is finished. The Valthani threat to Earth has been eliminated." But Elena could see in his eyes that this was just the beginning. The awakened humans around the world were not just defending their planet. They were preparing to reclaim their place among the stars. "The archive contains the locations of every Valthani colony and military base," Jake said, studying information that was flowing into his enhanced mind. "They have been expanding across our old territory for 15,000 years, thinking they were safe." Lisa realized what he was implying. "You are planning to go after them." "Not just go after them," Jake replied. "We are going to restore the human empire. Every world they took from us will be reclaimed. Every species they conquered will be freed. The Valthani will learn what happens when you try to destroy humanity. Elena felt a mixture of pride and concern as she watched Jake and the other awakened humans coordinate their next moves. Humanity had survived the ultimate test and emerged stronger than ever. But she wondered if they were becoming something that was no longer recognizably human. What about the rest of us, she asked. The people who do not have the genetic markers. What happens to normal humans in this new world? The archive's expression softened. You are all part of this, Elena. The awakened ones are the military leaders and technical specialists, but they will need teachers, scientists, diplomats, and countless others to rebuild human civilization. Everyone has a role to play. Jake nodded, and for a moment Elena could see the construction worker she had first met. We did not fight and die 15,000 years ago just to create a warrior society. We did it to protect all of humanity. That has not changed. As reports continued to pour in from around the world, Elena realized that they were witnessing the birth of a new age. The hidden human facilities were becoming cities. The awakened humans were sharing their knowledge freely. Ancient technologies were being adapted for peaceful uses. Within days, diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were cured. Energy systems that produced no pollution were being built in every major city. Ships were being prepared for humanity's return to the stars. The Vilthani had come to Earth expecting to conquer a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened the sleeping giant of the galaxy. Humanity was back, and this time they would make sure that no alien species would ever again threaten the peace of the universe. Elena stood in the command center, watching as the first human starships in 15,000 years launched from hidden bases around the world. The underground shelters had served their purpose. Now it was time for humanity to reclaim its destiny among the stars. The age of hiding was over. The age of human ascendancy had begun.